On New Year's Eve 1853, 21 of Britain's most distinguished scientists climbed inside a 30-foot concrete dinosaur and ate an 8-course dinner. They toasted Georges Cuvier, they toasted William Buckland, they sang songs until past midnight, and they did all of this inside a sculpture that was already wrong. The man who built it, Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins, knew the nose horn was questionable. Richard Owen, the celebrity paleontologist who sat in the skull that night, literally inside the dinosaur's head, had already noted in his writings that the horn was more than doubtful. They unveiled it anyway. That Iguanodon is still standing in Crystal Palace Park, London. It was given Grade 1 listed status in 2007, protected by law. A 171-year-old mistake that cannot legally be corrected, and it's not alone. These are 13 dinosaurs that museums have known were wrong for decades, in some cases over a century. The papers were published, the evidence was clear, and the display cards stayed the same. Let's count them down. Number 13, Dilophosaurus. If you grew up in the 1990s, you remember this dinosaur, the one with the frill that pops out around its neck like an angry umbrella, the one that spits venom and blinds Dennis Nedry in his Jeep. Here is the thing. None of that is real. There is zero fossil evidence that Dilophosaurus had a frill, or that it could spit venom, or that it was the size shown in the movie. The actual Dilophosaurus was about 20 feet long, and it had no defensive structures around its neck whatsoever. Steven Spielberg's team invented the frill to distinguish it from Velociraptor on screen. They invented the venom because it looked cool. And somewhere in the Warner Brothers legal department, someone signed off on selling that fiction as a toy. Here is what gets me. Walk into any museum gift shop in America right now and you will find a Dilophosaurus with a frill. Not in the prehistoric creatures of Jurassic Park section, but in the dinosaur section mixed in with the scientifically accurate models. 32 years, zero fossil evidence, and still selling the myth. Number 12. Pachycephalosaurus. The dome-headed dinosaur, you have seen the displays. 2 Pachycephalosaurus charging at each other like bighorn sheep, skulls colliding in some prehistoric battle for dominance. It is a beautiful image. It is also probably wrong. In 2004, researchers analysed the dome structure and found something interesting. The bone is not solid, it is filled with spaces that would have made it terrible at absorbing impacts. A head-butting Pachycephalosaurus would have given itself a concussion with every collision. The current theory is that those domes were probably for display, attracting mates, intimidating rivals, not for smashing skulls. That was 2004, 21 years ago. Go to the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, go to the Royal Tyrrell, look at the Pachycephalosaurus displays. You will still see them posed like they are about to ram each other into extinction. The head-butting myth is too good to kill. Number 11. Therizinosaurus 3-foot claws. Let me say that again. 3 feet. Each claw was longer than a human arm. When paleontologists first found these claws in Mongolia, they assumed they had discovered the ultimate predator. What else would need weapons that size? This thing must have been slashing prey apart like some kind of Cretaceous wolverine, except it was not. Therizinosaurus was an herbivore. Those massive claws were for pulling down branches, for stripping leaves. Maybe for defense, sure, but primarily for feeding on plants. We have known this since the 1990s when more complete specimens were found. The teeth, the gut structure, the whole body plan screams plant eater. But museums wanted a monster. Walk through most dinosaur halls and you will find Therizinosaurus displayed as a predator, claws extended, threatening posture. The signage might mention it was herbivorous, buried in the 3rd paragraph. But the display sells violence. 3-foot claws, 8 plants, museums show a killer. Number 10. Pterosaurs. This one is simple. Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, they never were. They are flying reptiles that lived alongside dinosaurs, but they belong to a completely different group called Pterosauria. Saying a pterosaur is a dinosaur is like saying a dolphin is a fish. Same environment, different animal. We have known this since 1801. That is over 220 years. And yet, walk through the dinosaur hall at dozens of museums worldwide. you will find pterosaurs hanging from the ceiling mixed in with the dinosaur displays, sometimes labelled, sometimes not. The Museum of Natural History in London even has a sign that states, "Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs." They had to put up a sign because visitors kept asking why the flying reptiles look so different from the other dinosaurs. They are not dinosaurs, they are pterosaurs. This has been settled science for longer than photography has existed. Number 9. Stegosaurus. For 100 years, people believed Stegosaurus had 2 brains, one in its head, one in its butt. This is not a joke. This was actually taught in schools. The idea was that Stegosaurus was so large and so stupid that it needed a second brain near its hips to control its back, legs and tail. The evidence was an enlargement in the spinal canal near the pelvis. Paleontologists in the 1880s looked at this and concluded it must be a brain. It was not. It was a glycogen body, a structure for storing energy. Birds have them too, it has nothing to do with thinking. We figured this out by the 1990s. The second brain myth has been dead for 30 years. But ask anyone over 40 about Stegosaurus and they will probably mention the 2 brains. Because that is what the museum displays said when they were kids. That is what the textbook said. And for decades, nobody bothered to update the signage. Museums loved the 2-brain myth too much to kill it. Number 8. Deinonychus and the Raptor family. Every museum put the hands on backwards. I'm not exaggerating, for 30 years virtually every mounted dromaeosaur skeleton in the world had anatomically impossible wrists. Here is the problem. Early reconstructions showed raptors with pronated hands, palms facing down like a person about to play the piano. Paleontologists call this bunny hands because it looks like a rabbit begging for treats. But theropod dinosaurs could not do this. Their wrist bones were structured so their palms faced inward toward each other like a person about to clap. This is how modern birds hold their wings when folded. We have known since the early 2000s that pronated hands were impossible. The bones simply do not articulate that way. Museum mounts from the 1970s through the 1990s all show raptors with their hands in positions that would have required dislocating their wrists. Some museums have fixed this, many have not. Next time you see a mounted raptor skeleton, look at the hands. If the claws point down instead of inward, you are looking at a 30-year-old mistake that nobody bothered to correct. In the 1993 film Jurassic Park, Alan Grant describes Velociraptor to a snot-nosed kid who says it looks like a 6-foot turkey. Grant proceeds to explain how terrifying they were. The kid was right. Actual Velociraptors were about 2 feet tall at the hip. They weighed around 30 pounds. They were in fact approximately the size of a turkey, and they were covered in feathers. The filmmakers knew the size was wrong. They modelled their Velociraptors after Deinonychus, a related species that was actually human-sized. They kept the name Velociraptor because it sounded cooler. As for the feathers, the first direct evidence came in 1998 when paleontologists found quill knobs on a Velociraptor forearm. These are the attachment points for wing feathers. Velociraptors had feathered arms, probably feathered bodies too. That was 1998, 27 years ago. In 2013, when Jurassic World was announced, director Colin Trevorrow tweeted 2 words that made paleontologists everywhere slump in their chairs: no feathers. The franchise that introduced millions of children to dinosaurs has spent 30 years refusing to update to accurate science. And museum gift shops keep selling the scaly, human-sized Velociraptor because that is what the movies show. Turkey-sized with feathers, museums still sell the Jurassic Park version. Number 6. Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus has been completely rebuilt 3 times since 2014. In 2014, new fossils revealed that Spinosaurus wasn't the bipedal super predator from Jurassic Park 3. It had short hind legs. It might have been quadrupedal. It spent most of its time in water. In 2020, we found the tail. It turns out Spinosaurus had a massive paddle-shaped tail, like a newt. It was essentially a 50-foot aquatic predator, a river monster. In 2022, more analysis suggested the hind legs might have been longer than the 2014 reconstruction indicated. Every few years, our understanding of Spinosaurus changes dramatically. This is science working as intended. New fossils, new interpretations, new reconstructions. But here's the thing. Some museums are still displaying the 1990s version, the bipedal land predator, the Jurassic Park monster, because updating a mounted skeleton costs money, because visitors recognize the old version, because change is hard. 11 years since the first major revision, some museums are 3 versions behind. Number 5. Oviraptor. In 1923, a team from the American Museum of Natural History found a skeleton in Mongolia, lying on top of a nest of eggs. The eggs were assumed to belong to Protoceratops, a common dinosaur in the area. People concluded it was stealing eggs. They named it Oviraptor, which means EGG thief. For 72 years, Oviraptor was displayed as a villain. Museums showed it with eggs in its mouth. Children's books described it as sneaky and cowardly. Then in 1995, paleontologists found more eggs, this time with embryos inside. And those embryos were Oviraptor embryos. The egg thief was not stealing anything, it was sitting on its own nest, brooding its eggs like a bird. That dinosaur found in 1923 was not a criminal caught in the act. It was a parent who died protecting its young. Here is the cruel part. Under international naming rules, you cannot rename a species just because the original name turned out to be wrong. Oviraptor will be called EGG Thief forever, despite being completely innocent. Framed for a crime for 72 years, its name can never be cleared. Number 4. Brontosaurus. In 1877, paleontologist Othniel Charles Marsh discovered a massive sauropod skeleton in Wyoming. It was missing a skull, so he named it a Pachycephalosaurus. 2 years later, in 1879, his team found what they thought was a different species. This one had a skull. He called it Brontosaurus, thunder lizard, one of the most iconic dinosaur names ever created. Here is the problem, it was the same dinosaur. Marsh was in such a rush to one-up his rival Edward Drinkercope that he did not notice he had already named this animal. It gets worse. The skull Marsh attached to Brontosaurus was not even from the same species. It came from a Camarasaurus, a completely different dinosaur with a completely different head shape. So for 100 years, museums displayed Brontosaurus with the wrong skull. The name was officially retired in 1903. Scientists declared Brontosaurus was just an Apatosaurus. The name should have died. It did not. Pop culture kept Brontosaurus alive. The Flintstones ate Brontosaurus burgers. Museums kept the name on display cards because that is what visitors expected. In 2015, new research suggested Brontosaurus might be different enough from Apatosaurus to be its own genus after all. The name was resurrected, sort of. But those 100 years of wrong skulls? Those 100 years of displaying Camarasaurus heads on Apatosaurus bodies and calling the whole thing Brontosaurus? That happened, and some museums still have not updated their mounts, the dinosaur that got deleted twice. Number 3. T-Rex. In 1915, the American Museum of Natural History unveiled the first complete mounted Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. Henry Fairfield Osborne, the museum president, had it displayed standing upright like a kangaroo, tail dragging on the ground, head 30 feet in the air. A living tripod. This pose became iconic. Every T-Rex in every movie, every painting, every museum for the next 60 years looked like this. Godzilla's posture comes directly from that 1915 mount. By 1970, scientists knew it was wrong. The hip joints could not support that position, the tail vertebrae would have to be dislocated. A living Tyrannosaurus Rex standing like that would have been in constant pain. The correct posture was horizontal, the body was parallel to the ground, the tail extended behind for balance, the head forward like a massive bird of prey. And yet the American Museum of Natural History kept their T-Rex in the wrong posture until 1992, 77 years. 22 years after we knew for certain it was impossible. In 1992, they finally dismantled the skeleton and remounted it in the correct horizontal position. It was not unveiled to the public until 1995. Meanwhile, a study found that when you ask children and college students to draw a T-Rex, most of them still draw the 1915 posture, tail dragging and body upright, the same pose that was wrong before their grandparents were born. Physics proved it wrong. Museums waited 77 years. Number 2. The Belgian Iguanodons. In 1878, coal miners in Bernissar, Belgium struck something unexpected. Bones. Massive bones. Over the next 3 years, they excavated 38 iguanodon skeletons from the same location. It was one of the most spectacular dinosaur discoveries in history, and unlike the fragmented remains Richard Owen had worked with in England, these skeletons were nearly complete. Finally, paleontologists could see where the thumb spike actually went. Not on the nose, on the hand, where a thumb should be. But they still got the posture wrong. The Belgian scientists reconstructed their iguanodons in a kangaroo-like pose. Body upright, tail on the ground, standing like a person in a dinosaur suit. This was 1878. The same year they figured out the thumb. It took until 1980, more than 100 years later, for scientists to determine that Iguanodon actually walked on all fours most of the time, with its tail held horizontal. The kangaroo pose was anatomically impossible, just like the T-Rex tripod. 102 years of displaying Iguanodon in a posture it could never have held. The thumb spike took 56 years to fix after the first complete specimens were found. The posture took 102, and some museum models still show the kangaroo stance because that is what the original Belgian reconstructions looked like. Number 1. The Crystal Palace Iguanodon. We're back where we started. On the last day of 1853, Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins hosted a dinner for 21 distinguished guests inside the mould of his Iguanodon sculpture. Richard Owen sat at the head of the table, literally inside the dinosaur's skull. They ate 8 courses, they drank wine. They sang a song called The Jolly Old Beast. The invitation was printed on a drawing of a pterodactyl wing. It read, "Mr. Waterhouse Hawkins requests the honour of Professor Blank's company at dinner in the Iguanodon." There is something almost beautiful about the arrogance. Celebrating a sculpture you already suspect is wrong. Knowing the nose horn is doubtful. Hosting a party anyway. The Crystal Palace Iguanodons were unveiled to the public in 1854. They depicted Iguanodon as a 4-legged rhinoceros-like creature with a horn on its nose. The thumb spike that Gideon Mantell discovered decades earlier had been interpreted as a defensive horn like a rhino. By 1878, the Belgian discoveries proved this was wrong. The thumb was a thumb. By 1980, the posture was proven wrong. Iguanodon didn't walk like a hippo. By 2007, the Crystal Palace dinosaurs were given Grade 1 listed status. That is the highest protection under British heritage law. They cannot be altered. They cannot be corrected. They are preserved exactly as they were built, mistakes and all. Those sculptures have been wrong for 171 years. They will be wrong forever. And here's the thing that gets me. At that dinner in 1853, they hung plaques honouring 4 scientists: Georges Cuvier, William Buckland, Richard Owen, and Gideon Mantell. Mantell was the man who actually discovered and named Iguanodon. He correctly proposed that the dinosaur was partially bipedal. He argued that the forelimbs were smaller than the hind limbs. Owen disagreed. Owen insisted on the 4-legged rhinoceros-like reconstruction. Mantell died in 1852, the year before the dinner. They ate inside a dinosaur that proved Mantell wrong, except Mantell was right all along, and they toasted his memory anyway. 171 years. Grade 1 listed. Legally protected mistake. Next time you walk through a museum dinosaur hall, look at the hands on the raptors. Check if the pterosaurs are labelled as dinosaurs. Look for the kangaroo posture Iguanodon, the head-butting Pachycephalosaurus, and the frilled Dilophosaurus in the gift shop. You now know more than the display cards. Museums are not temples of perfect knowledge. They are institutions run by humans with budgets, politics, and visitors who expect to see what they saw in the movies. The science updates, the papers get published, the display cards stay the same. If this changed how you think about museums, subscribe. We do this every week. If you want to see the one dinosaur we know the exact colour of, and to see the first preserved dinosaur Butthole, and to learn why museums still display the wrong version, that video is on screen now.